Hello, you've reached S.J. Thomason with Christian-Apologist.com. Today, I'm going to report to you an article entitled, Ehrman, Ra, and Carrier Are Mistaken. Early Christian martyrs did not have mass hallucinations. I have encountered numerous atheists or agnostics, such as Richard Carrier, who wrote Empty Tomb, Jesus Beyond the Grave, Aaron Ra, who's sort of famous on YouTube and Twitter, and Bart Ehrman, who wrote How Jesus Became God, who posit that early Christian disciples, such as Peter, Paul, James, Mary Magdalene, and John, had mass hallucinations. They often admit that these early Christians believed that they saw Jesus after he rose from the dead, implying the early Christians were honest, but they posit that they really just had mass hallucinations. The intention of this video is to share why these atheists and agnostics are incorrect in this assumption. Psychologists define hallucinations as follows. A hallucination is a sensation or sensory perception that a person experiences in the absence of a relevant external stimulus. That is, a person experiences something that doesn't really exist except in their mind. A hallucination can occur in any sensory modality: visual, auditory, olfactory, etc. A hallucination is not the same as an illusion, which is something that deceives by producing a false or misleading impression of reality, such as a magician's tricks or a mirage of water in a desert. Hallucinations are also not delusions, which occur when a person believes something despite conclusive evidence to the contrary, such as a person believing that U.S. President John F. Kennedy is still alive, despite witnessing via television or in person the fatal gunshot wound that killed him. As Mike Licona states, hallucinations are private experiences occurring inside the mind of an individual. Since they are mental events with no external reality, there is no way for people to participate in the same hallucination. Hallucinations are similar to dreams in this sense. I could not awaken my wife in the middle of the night and say, "Honey, I'm dreaming I'm in Maui. Go back to sleep. Join me in my dream, and let's have a free vacation." She may dream she's with me in Maui, but it's not going to be the same dream. And any interaction with me in that dream is not something in which I would actually be participating. In summary, hallucinations occur individually within someone's mind, and hallucinations are of things that do not exist. Mass hallucinations, as atheists and agnostics have dubbed them, therefore do not exist. We do not have access to the minds of fellow humans, which is why people cannot share mass hallucinations. In contrast, mass illusions or mass delusions may exist. Groups may be duped by a magician's illusions, and groups may share the same vision of a mirage of water in the desert. But illusions are by definition acts of deception. So if early Christians were acting with the intentions to deceive, we would need evidence that they benefited from the deceptions. Instead, we have evidence that they did not materially benefit, and instead were beaten, whipped, imprisoned, beheaded, torched, and crucified. Groups may also share delusions, such as when multiple people make claims that the earth is flat. This mass hallucination proposition is further refuted when one examines the reports from early Christians of multiple encounters with the risen Christ over a 40-day period. The so-called mass hallucinations were not of the same event or encounter, yet they all shared the same message: Jesus rose from the dead. Mary Magdalene was the first to see Jesus, who appeared to her at the empty tomb, as reported in John 20:16-18. He then appeared to female disciples on the route from the empty tomb to the disciples' place of hiding, as reported in Matthew 28:8-10. The women eyewitnesses to the first or second appearance of Jesus were named by Luke 24:7-10. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and others with them. Jesus appeared to the 11 male disciples in Galilee, where Jesus had instructed them through the women to go. He further appeared to Cleopas and another disciple on the road to Emmaus, as reported in Luke 24:13-27. He made more appearances over the 40 days he spent with his disciples before they saw him rise into heaven, as reported in Acts 1-9. John 21:25 states, Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written. Paul wrote that Jesus appeared to 500 people in separate instances, including specific disciples, Peter and James, Jesus' half-brother, and himself. He wrote this at a time when some of the 500 were still alive and could have contested this information if it were not true. It appears in 1 Corinthians 15. Atheists often argue that early Christian disciples had visions, just as people may have visions or dreams of loved ones after they depart. Yet this position does not take into account the fact that the disciples were emboldened after they said they saw and ate with Jesus. They came out of hiding to preach illegally for him. The position further does not take into account the way the disciples expressed doubts before the resurrection. Peter thrice denied Jesus to avoid his same fate, yet ended up being crucified upside down. Jesus' half-brother James, who tried to stop his ministry early on, ended up preaching for him boldly before being martyred. And then there's Paul's experience. Jesus appeared to Paul on the road to Damascus when Paul, who was then known as Saul, was preparing to hunt down Christians for imprisonment and execution. Acts 9. Paul converted to Christianity immediately and went on to write between 7 and 13 New Testament books. Despite being whipped, beaten, stoned, imprisoned, and shipwrecked, Paul persisted. He was beheaded by Nero around the year 62. In conclusion, and in agreement with some atheists and agnostics, early Christian disciples and martyrs honestly believed that they saw the risen Christ. But their beliefs were not based on mass hallucinations or visions. They were based on the fact they saw the risen Christ in a physical form. And despite taking risks in their lives and receiving no material or physical rewards, they shared the good news, knowing that the prize they would receive is in heaven with Jesus forever. The door to heaven is open to all of God's children, even those who have posited mass hallucinations. As Paul said in his letter to the Philippians 3:14, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. And as Jesus said when he first showed up to the apostles, they were startled and surprised, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, why are you troubled? And why do doubts rise in your mind? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. Thank you very much. I really hope you'll subscribe to my channel, maybe even hit a like, and be sure to come visit Christian-apologist.com. I really appreciate your stopping by today. Bye-bye.